everyone, and welcome to the 7th round of the American Monoposto Championship 2022. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Josh Kassar, and today the AMC is headed for the Laguna Seca Raceway in Monterey, California. But before we get started with the action, let's have a quick look at all the news from the AMC. Gael Campos is going to make his debut for the Chick Racing team in Laguna Seca, and the Spaniard is going to be running with the number 6 car. Furthermore, Hugh Hamill was supposed to make his debut for the Schleppek team this weekend, but technical difficulties kept him from participating in the race after a decent qualifying showing. And finally, Gabriel Peckley is returning for the Bravo Racing team this weekend, and we'll see if he can build on his solid pace from past performances. Well, last time out in Road America, both Jan Winter and Simon Core were able to celebrate gratifying results after strange seasons. So how did both experience their races respectively? Well, let's find out.
So, last time out in Road America, two driver seasons truly came alive. While people like Knežević, Heyman, or Kativo struggled to win the race, a familiar face was finally able to fulfill his potential and actually win a race in the American Monoposto Championship. Jan Winter wins the race at Road America, 20 points for the man with the number 11.
Gut, ich sag mal so, zufriedener als erwartet, weil ich tatsächlich in die Saison mit relativ wenigen Erwartungen gegangen bin, und man hat auch in den ersten Rennen gemerkt, dass ich nicht gerade viele Trainingsrunden absolviert hatte, weil ich eben relativ wenig Motivation vor allem erstmal hatte. Nachdem ich allerdings so die ersten Runden mit diesem IndyCar-Auto halt eben gefahren bin, vor allem weil ich noch nie wirklich Erfahrung in diesem Auto hatte und auch ein paar Runden gebraucht hatte, um damit überhaupt erstmal klarzukommen, plus Turbomotor, der halt komplett durch die Decke knallt, wenn ich das mal so sagen kann. Aber nachdem ich mich wirklich dran gewöhnt habe, das war auch schon im ersten Rennen so, hat sich's natürlich geiler angefühlt als erwartet. Kamen dann die ersten Rennen natürlich mit, ich glaube, das war Rio, wo ich ja meine ersten Führungsrunden hatte. Korrigiere mich, wenn ich da falsch liege. Auf jeden Fall, da hatte ich tatsächlich so die ersten Gefühle gehabt, Alter, ich kann ja hier Rennen gewinnen plötzlich. Dann kamen so die ersten Gefühle, Alter, vielleicht soll ich mal ein bisschen mehr trainieren, dann könnte ich mal vielleicht ein bisschen mehr Leistung zeigen. Habe ich dann tatsächlich Richtung Montreal schon mehr gemacht, habe da schon ein bisschen mehr trainiert und hat man auch dann gemerkt, die Ergebnisse waren plötzlich da. 2. Platz, klar, nach dem Crash in der ersten Kurve, es wäre mehr drin gewesen, ganz ehrlich. Aber dann kam Road America mit die Strecke, wo ich mit Abstand am meisten trainiert hatte, und siehe da, es hat sich gelohnt.
But with that being said, does Jan Winter still consider himself a contender for this year's championship, considering that now he's in 3rd place, right behind both his teammate Alexander Knežević and MPM's number 1 Kevin Peters?
Ja, also ich bin mal ganz ehrlich zu dir, nach Montreal habe ich mit der Meisterschaft eigentlich schon abgeschlossen und bin tatsächlich vor allem mit der Intention rein in Road America, dem guten Knežević zu helfen, möglichst als guter Teamkollege da zu gucken, dass er möglichst viele Punkte noch irgendwie holt und dass wir vor allem die Konstrukteursmeisterschaft halt eben holen. Dass das Rennen natürlich dann nicht so verläuft, dass erstens Knežević vor Kevin Peters gelandet ist, plus dass ich einen Haufen Vorsprung hatte in dem Sinne, dass ich da weit aufgeholt habe in der Meisterschaft, lasse ich die Sache natürlich gerne für mich offen für die nächsten Rennen. Schau natürlich, dass ich Knežević unterstütze, dass er da die Meisterschaft holt, weil er natürlich schon echt extrem viel Zeit in die Sache rein investiert hat und ich es ihm zu gern gönne. Aber wie gesagt, ich lasse es offen für mich. Mal gucken, was passiert. Wer weiß, es kann noch viel passieren in so vielen Rennen. Und ja, schauen wir mal.
On the other hand, there was somebody who, after multiple terrible performances, finally got his moment in the sun, if you will. That, of course, being yours truly. I mean, to be honest with you all, this podium means a lot to me personally. And this might sound overly sentimental or misplaced, but it is true. Seeing that we've been building this place for over half a year now, and we've seen many different people come into the league. We've seen the driver standards evolve. We've seen people have great drives and fantastic races, and you're always on the outside of that, and you're never truly able to participate, at the front. Always assuming that you will never be able to participate at the front, that you'll never be able to compete at the front, and you put yourself under a lot of pressure, especially after what happened in Michigan. To finally be able to say, yes, I finished on the podium in the league that I helped build, it's a gratifying feeling for sure, and it means a lot. It means a lot. Maybe more than it would to some other people, but that, to me, that doesn't describe the feeling that I felt that night. But it kind of gives you this weird itch that you want to scratch now, where you want to repeat that, right? I don't know if it's gonna happen. Most likely, it's not gonna happen, but I don't care. I'm happy with this season. I finished on the podium. What more can I say? What more could I have hoped for, to be honest? So my job will essentially be to support James and try and give him more podiums after you finished on the podium twice already. I don't know. We'll see.
Testing for round 7 of the championship was once again dominated by the usual suspects. However, it seems as though even the top drivers struggled with the undulations of this track, as well as twitchy cars, especially the world-famous corkscrew, which could become a struggle throughout the race today. Then again, Alexander Knežević seems to enjoy the circuit, seeing as he's managed to snatch pole position. Peters qualified right behind him in second, while Jan Winter qualifies in third. And Daniel Benton-Rieder once again proved his enormous potential by qualifying in fourth, while Kativo and Peckley settle for 5th and 6th. Aaron Smith qualifies in 7th with almost no practice at all, while Simon Corr, seemingly motivated by his podium in Road America, qualifies ahead of his teammate James Early. Gino Gaggiano and Dominic Rustermeyer start the race in P10 and P11 respectively, whilst Philip Fekler starts in 12th. Christian Dittmer and Bartosz Korpeta might continue their duel from Road America as they start on row 7, while Gal Campos, Stefan Cerna and Aaron Curtis round out the field. And with all of that being said, I'll now hand you over to your race commentator, Simon Corr.
Thank you, Josh. Hello, everybody. It's Saturday. You know what that means. Round 7 of the American Monoposto Championship. And we're looking at Alexander Knežević and Kevin Peters in the first row. Again, those two are fighting for this year's American Monoposto Championship. But depending on how today's race goes, Jan Winter might still be in with a shout for the title. And Gonzalez Kativo is mathematically also still in with a shout for the title. But then again, it doesn't really look as if he's in a realistic position to win it. But nonetheless, let's see how the race turns out today. The green flag drops incredibly early today. Alexander Knežević on the left, Peters on the right, and here we go. Benton-Rieder in 4th. Around the final bend, Knežević in the lead ahead of Peters. Benton-Rieder already fighting with Winter. Behind them, Peckley, Kativo, and Aaron Smith. Everybody seemingly filing through well, and look at that collision between Smith, Peckley, and Kativo. Aaron Smith on the inside, bumping into both Gabriel Peckley and Gonzalez Kativo. And it looks as if that was especially bad for Gabriel Peckley. Smith and Kativo somehow following through well. Then Corr, Gaggiano early behind them. Ahead of them, Benton-Rieder, Winter, and of course in first and second still Alexander Knežević and Kevin Peters. Again, the two drivers fighting for this year's title still in front. And again, it doesn't really look good for Gonzalez Kativo's championship ambitions, if he still holds any championship ambitions. And in the back, Stefan Cerna is flying through the corkscrew. We talked about it before the race started. The corkscrew, one of the most famous corners in the world of motorsport. Incredibly difficult to take, especially with these cars, but let's hope that something like this doesn't happen too often today. Stefan Cerna gets on the dirt, therefore outbrakes himself, and also slightly bumps into Gael Campos. But Campos is able to continue for now. Peckley already trying to fight his way through the midfield, overtaking Christian Dittmer. It seems as if he's pretty quick today, but after that start, I'm not sure how many places he can make up in the 60 minutes plus 1 lap race distance. Knežević still leading ahead of Kevin Peters, Winter in 3rd, Bentreader in 4th, Smith in 5th, Gonzalez Cativo in 6th, the usual suspects in the top 6, then behind them Cor, Gaggiano, and James Early. Cor seemingly much slower than Gino Gaggiano behind them, who bumps into him in the final turn. Spicy situation with those two. James Early says thank you very much, he's now ahead of Gino Gaggiano. And then Pekla already ahead of both Filip Fekler and Bartosz Krpeta, so Pekla might still be in with a shout for good points today if he can keep it on track. Now, of course, the question is, Winter in 3rd, how aggressive is he going to be in that potential championship fight? Is he going to try and dive bomb his way up to 2nd, or is he going to stay in 3rd, calm and collected, and just try and finish in the top 3? Behind them, of course, Bentreader and Aaron Smith. Bentreader known for his somewhat erratic driving this season, but then again, not to say that he doesn't have pace, because he definitely does. Winter in T1 doesn't try and overtake Peters, but Smith tries to overtake Bentreader, and he does so successfully. Smith now in 4th, behind him Bentreader, Cativo, and still Simon Cor in 7th. And look at Pekla trying to overtake Dominic Rustemeyer. Outbrakes himself, doesn't work, Rustemeyer's through. Very aggressive start from Gabriel Pekla, but understandably so considering what happened at the start. Meanwhile, it still looks as if Simon Cor is somewhat blocking Gino Gaggiano, not by deliberately doing something unfair or something sketchy, but by just being much slower than the Italian. At the same time, maybe that's a strategic maneuver to keep James Early in a position where he can re-overtake Gino Gaggiano, because after his mistake, it looks as if Gaggiano has re-overtaken James Early. Meanwhile, Daniel Bentreader is dropping back massively compared to the top 4, and mistakes like these certainly won't help him trying to reduce that gap. Gonzalez Cativo certainly won't mind, though I suspect he'd be happier with Bentreader trying to take points away from especially Kevin Peters, considering that Alexander Knežević and Gonzalez Cativo are friends, and if either one of those two win this year's championship, I suspect Gonzalez Cativo would be happier with Alexander Knežević taking the title. In the back, a few position changes have happened regarding people like Krpeta and Curtis, but we haven't really paid too much attention to those fights considering everything that has happened at the front and in the midfield so far, but we'll certainly try and keep you up to date on what's been going on around P10 to P12. Knežević still in the lead, ahead of Peters, Winter, and Smith. Looks as if there's a bit of a gap between Alexander Knežević and Kevin Peters now. We're not sure which strategies everybody is on. We suspect that most of the drivers will try and go for a 2-stop strategy, but then again, tire wear seems to be rather high around Laguna Seca, so we're not particularly sure how many times people are going to pit. Bentreader is still ahead of Cativo, Cor, Gaggiano, and Early. Looks as if positions are set for now, and it would certainly be incredibly important for Daniel Bentreader to finally finish in a good position after his more than disastrous race in Montreal and his somewhat erratic comeback in Road America. And it's no secret that Odilo has not been happy with his performances so far. Once again, a big lunge by Gabriel Pekla, desperately trying to overtake Dominic Rustemeyer again. He definitely has the pace to compete today. Thankfully, no contact between these two, but Pekla with a bit of understeer off the racing line, tries to keep his car in shape. You could argue a bit of an erratic performance today, but then again, considering the position he's in right now, definitely understandable. Knežević still ahead of Peters, going on the gravel. Small mistake by Peters, but he has to let both Smith and Winter through. Peters now in 4th, Winter in 2nd, Smith in 3rd, and there's a car in the gravel. It's Stefan Cerne. Stefan Cerne's out of the race. What happened there? Well, a bit of oversteer, it seems, for Stefan Cerne, one of the drivers at DMS Falcon Sim Racing. Very disappointing for the number 68. But in the meantime, Gabriel Pekla tries to make up ground once again, overtaking Christian Dittmer, who almost bumps into Gabriel Pekla. Might have been a bit of contact between these two, but both are able to continue. Definitely important for Gabriel Pekla to make up places. He's now in 11th. Knežević still ahead of Winter, Smith in 3rd. Kevin Peters 4th, ahead of Bentreader in 5th with a huge gap to Smith. Cativo in 6th, Cor in 7th, Gino Gaggiano still in 8th, Early in 9th. Behind them, Dominic Rustemeyer in 10th, Pekla in 11th, and Christian Dittmer in 12th. And it looks as if we might be on for an Odilo 1-2 right now, depending on how many times everybody at the front has to pit. But now the question is, are team orders going to come into play looking at the championship situation? In the meantime, James Early behind Gino Gaggiano makes a small mistake. Certainly uncharacteristic for James Early to make that kind of mistake, but it shows you how difficult people find these cars to be around Laguna Seca. We're not sure if it's considered a lack of grip issue or whether people just tend to struggle with the undulations around this track, but nonetheless, Early's able to continue, but he's fallen behind Christian Dittmer. Winter's still behind Knežević, who slightly outbrakes himself. Winter now in the lead. Knežević in second, Smith in third, Peters in fourth. Bit of a gap between Aaron Smith and Kevin Peters already. Smith seems to be on the roll today, pace-wise. I suspect he's in a position where he might be able to overtake Alexander Knežević in the next few coming laps. Smith trying to push Knežević, going around the outside at the corkscrew. Brilliant maneuver from Aaron Smith. Let's look at that one more time. Absolutely astonishing maneuver from Aaron Smith. He's definitely gunning for his first podium today after what happened at both Road America and Laguna Seca. He's now in second. Jan Winter is actually in the lead, which would be brilliant for his championship campaign. About 15 minutes in, and Simon Corr is the first of the points runners to come into the pits. Now that looks like a 3-stop strategy for the driver with the number 99 and the admin of the American Monoposto Championship, who seems to struggle a lot with tire wear, at least in these cars, especially compared to his teammate James Early. And only one lap later, Kevin Peters decides to pit, which makes it look as if he might be on for his 3-stop strategy as well. Early also seemingly going for a 3-stop. And Winter bends it! Winter loses his front wing, and that might just spell the end to his championship dreams. Jan Winter with a crucial mistake, losing his front wing. And I suppose that spells the end to his ambitions in the American Monoposto Championship. What a bitter, bitter blow to Jan Winter. We certainly didn't expect that to happen. Jan Winter dropping many places, and of course he has to pit. And now the question is, how many places can he make up before the end of the race? But no matter what happens, it looks as if his championship campaign is pretty much done at this point. Ironically enough, Aaron Smith pitted around the same time that Jan Winter went into the pits, and we're still unsure how crooked his car is going to be after that collision. Look at Daniel Bentenrieder almost losing it. But he keeps it on track. Again, he was heavily criticized by people within his team and other drivers for his somewhat erratic behavior on track. So we'll keep an eye on him and see if he has improved since last time out in Road America. Gabriel Peckley has come into the pits, and he's going to come out right behind or in front of James Early and Christian Dittmer. He's coming out behind both of them. Behind them, Bartosz Kopeta and Filip Fekler with somewhat anonymous races today. And we see on lap 16 that Alexander Knežević has decided to pit, which means that now González Cativo is in the lead. Bentenrieder decides to pit on the same lap as well, so similar strategy seemingly for two of the three Odilo boys. And let's see if they're going for a 2-stop or a 3-stop strategy. Let's just say that we wouldn't be surprised if we saw González Cativo try and do as little stops as possible, similar to what he tried in Road America. And look at Knežević coming out behind Aaron Smith. So the newcomer for MPM stays ahead of Alexander Knežević after his brilliant maneuver at the corkscrew. Behind them, Kevin Peters, virtually in third, but actually in fourth because González Cativo is still in the lead because he hasn't done his pit stop yet. Look at Peckley overtaking Dittmer once again, who guts onto the gravel and collides with the tire barrier, loses his front right wheel, and that's the end to his race. Double DNF for DMS Falcon Sim Racing. What a disappointment for Christian Dittmer and Stefan Serna today. Seemingly no collision between Gabriel Peckley and Christian Dittmer, so seemingly just a driver error from the man with the number 19. And now González Cativo has decided to pit, but the question is, where is he actually going to come out? Cativo's back on track, and it looks as if he came out right behind Simon Corr in the Streamline Engineering car. So now, of course, the question is, how much longer can González Cativo run with this fuel load? Essentially, González Cativo could have almost pulled up a 1-stop masterpiece at Road America, but it didn't quite work out. He had to go for a 2-stop right at the end, and it pushed him up to third place, but he wasn't in a position to win the race, despite his pretty solid performance there. So right now, Aaron Smith is leading the race ahead of Alexander Knežević in second. Kevin Peters is in third. Daniel Bentenrieder is still in fourth despite his slightly erratic driving today, but he still keeps it on track. Kor is in fifth. Kativo's in sixth behind him. Early in seventh. Peckley in eighth. Aaron Curtis in ninth. Winter in 10th. Dominic Rustemeyer in 11th after his pit stop. Now it might become a three-way fight between Aaron Smith, Alexander Knežević, and Kevin Peters for a race victory. Again, all depending on their fuel strategies and their tire strategies. And I wonder why Kevin Peters drops back so much. And I suspect that if Aaron Smith gets re-overtaken by Alexander Knežević, that then the Brit would let Peters through to help him out in the American Monoposto Drivers' Championship. But we'll have to wait and see if that actually comes to fruition or not. Meanwhile, Peckley fighting with early at the corkscrew. Great overtake from Peckley. Well executed by the Brazilian. Again, his pace today is absolutely on point. If only the start had been different for Peckley. And maybe if he hadn't gone off earlier, he might be in a much better position right now because his pace is without a doubt incredibly competitive. Behind him, Winter fighting with Aaron Curtis. Curtis with a solid performance so far in ninth after not setting a time in qualifying, if I remember correctly. But Curtis' pace today is no match for Jan Winter, so it doesn't really look as if Curtis is fighting Winter too much at this point. Bartosz Krpeta is nowhere today, but look at what happens next. He channels his inner Kimi Räikkönen and tries to find an, let's say, alternate escape route back to the track. Jumping over a hump back onto the track. Now, this might either be the most hilarious scene of the season or one of the most dangerous re-entries I've ever seen in sim racing. Maybe that's up for you to decide. Now, I'm not sure if he practiced this beforehand, but this doesn't look as if something that spontaneously came into his head, at least in my humble opinion. Now, Bentenrieder is still in fourth, despite going off track here. Kor's in fifth, remember, and Kativo's in sixth. Now, we're not sure as to why, but it seems as if González Kativo is having another set of issues with his pit stops today, taking longer than originally expected, but it doesn't look as if he changed the settings in a way where they would not match what he wants the car to behave like, so we're not particularly sure as to what happened, but nonetheless, that might be a reason as to why Kativo's currently in sixth and not further up the road. And again, if Bentenrieder can actually finish in fourth this time, it would be a great result for Odilo for sure. Now look at Kor not really defending against González Kativo. It looks as if Kor is struggling with a second set of tires. He already had issues chewing up his tires 2 weeks ago in Road America, but it seems to be way worse around Laguna Seca, at least from what we can tell. Let's see if he can keep it on track or if that might cause him to splice in a few more mistakes in there. Behind him, Gabriel Peckley. Again, great performance so far from Peckley. He might be in a position to catch up to the Streamline driver and overtake him the way he did James Early. Or maybe I was praising Daniel Bentenrieder too early because he goes off at the corkscrew, loses fourth place, obviously. And once again, that will be very disappointing for Odilo. Now he has to keep it on track. He has to let Kor through, Peckley through, behind him, Bartosz Krpeta. He's lapped. That doesn't matter. That will be another blow to Odilo's morale, at least from what we can tell. Certainly not been their day so far, despite the fact that Knežević is still in the fight for victory. While Peckley stuck behind Simon Kor will keep with this fight. Peckley trying to go for the lunge. Kor slightly going wide. Peckley says thank you very much. He's now ahead of the admin of the American Monoposto Championship. Now, we do not have an official driver of the day voting, but if we had, I'd definitely be able to tell you who might be voting for today. Bentenrieder now in sixth, of course, after his mistake at the corkscrew, and it looks as if we might have praised him too early because he makes another one, spinning at the final turn. Has to let his teammate Jan Winter through. He's now in sixth, has to let Early through. Goes round, keeps going. Bartosz Krpeta has to take avoiding action. Another crucial mistake from Daniel Bentenrieder. And in the background, Aaron Curtis is fighting with Dominic Rustemeyer. Rather anonymous races from both of them today, but if they can finish in the points, that's not particularly something I would call a criticism. And someone who hasn't been anonymous because of his mistakes has been Simon Kor, because after his second pit stop, he chucks it into the wall. He spins, chucks it into the wall, re-enters the track, realizes that he has to let the leaders through. And in doing that, he goes straight on into the gravel, into another barrier, and ends his own race. What an absolutely bizarre incident. What a bitter disappointment for the Streamline driver after his great result at Road America. You might as well say back to reality for Simon Core. And you might also say back to reality for Daniel Bentreader. He spins one lap after his original mistake at the same corner, almost collides with Aaron Curtis at that corner, but thankfully he doesn't. And he's now dropped back even more places, and I can already tell you that the stewards are definitely going to have a look at his driving after Laguna Seca. Meanwhile, Kevin Peters has definitely gone off the pace. We're not particularly sure as to why that is the case, but nonetheless, behind him, Gonzalez Cativo and Gabriel Packley are fighting. Again, great comeback from Gabriel Packley so far. He's now fighting with somebody who will be somewhat frustrated about how the season's gone. Not because of his pace, but because of multiple incidents over the season, multiple mistakes like in Interlagos, Rio, Montreal, Michigan, and so on and so forth. But then again, he definitely has the pace to compete. There is no question about that. But similar to that, Gabriel Packley seemingly also has the pace to compete in the American Monoposto Championship, looking at what we've seen from him so far this year. And the same goes for Aaron Smith. Without a shadow of a doubt, he decides to pit for a second time on lap 32. And you've got to wonder whether he would have been a championship contender if he'd been in the American Monoposto Championship from the first race on. Daniel Bentreader, third time's a charm. Bumping into the wall. Oh, and for a third time, he spins at the final turn, from hero to zero, within only a few laps. Now, one lap after Smith, Alexander Knežević decided to pit. Second stops for both Smith and Knežević. Now, let's look at it from Smith's perspective. Can he keep first place, or is Knežević able to overtake Aaron Smith after his pit stop? Doesn't look as if that's going to be the case, but let's have a look from this perspective. And Smith stays ahead of Alexander Knežević after their second pit stops. Peta's still in third. He stopped as well, though we didn't see it on screen. Meanwhile, Cativo went into the pits for a second time. Look at Winter fighting with Dominic Roostermeier. Roostermeier now ahead of Winter. Cativo ahead of both of them. And again, it doesn't look as if Winter is in a position where he can reach his full potential pace-wise, considering that he sort of ruined his car earlier on. After their second pit stops, I've got to wonder, do Smith and Kneze have to pit one more time, or is this essentially going to be a fight on track for race victory between Aaron Smith and Alexander Knežević? Look at Knežević getting the draft. Into T1, trying to overtake Smith. He does so successfully. Knežević now in the lead. Slight bump between these two, but Alexander Knežević is now in the lead, ahead of Aaron Smith. Peters in third. No immediate team orders, but we might just see that in a second or two. And Alexander Knežević with a crucial overtake, it seems. And he might be on for his third victory this season if he can keep his car ahead of both Aaron Smith and Kevin Peters right now. But Smith seemingly hasn't given up just yet, looking at the way he drives. Seemingly another small bump between those two, but it doesn't look as if Smith is doing anything overly ambitious right now. And like we predicted on the next lap, Kevin Peters goes ahead of Aaron Smith, so Smith lets his teammate through. Peters now in second. So far, it's been a quiet day for Philip Feckler. He lets Winter through, which allows Daniel Bentreader to try and go through once again. Going around the outside of Feckler, but again, that's not a criticism towards Feckler, because if he can keep it on track and if he can finish in the points, that's pretty much all that's asked of him. In that case, props to Feckler. Now this is surprising. A few laps before the finish, Peters decides to pit for a third time. Now seemingly it's not necessary for him to do so fuel-wise, but he does anyway to make sure that if a safety car occurs, he's on fresh tires. For now, he's in P3. Behind them, Peckley, Cativo in 5th. Winter already in 6th with a great performance after his mistake. James Early in 7th. Bentreader not in 8th. Seemingly, he got a drive-through penalty as well on top of everything that we've seen from him so far today. We're not particularly sure as to why he got a drive-through. Curtis in 8th, Roostemeyer in 9th, and Gino Gaggiano in 10th. Well, people like Core, Early, or Benton-Ritter aren't the only ones to make mistakes. Look at Gino Gaggiano going off in the 3rd sector. Though he's able to keep it out of the wall and continue, seemingly drivers are a bit more prone to mistakes around Laguna Seca today compared to races like Road America, at least from what we can tell. And if you have any theories as to why you might think that is the case, let us know in the comments below. Gabriel Peckley in for his final pit stop. He's now in 6th. And the question is for him as well, how many places can he make up till the finish line? And it looks as if there was a collision between Aaron Curtis and Daniel Benton-Ritter. We're not particularly sure as to what happened exactly, considering the huge amount of lag that we see here. Curtis ping is something that people complain about after the race, but nonetheless, we're not particularly sure whether Benton-Ritter pushed Curtis off the track or if it's just something that happened because of Curtis' huge amount of lag. And look at Peckley with a brilliant overtake against Jan Winter. Big lunge, big risk, but it paid off. Peckley now back in 5th. What an astounding maneuver only a few minutes before the race finish, you've got to say. Final lap of the race, and there is no big final dramatic battle between Alexander Knežević and Aaron Smith. Knežević wins his 3rd race this season. Wonderful performance from Alexander Knežević, taking 21 points. And in the meantime, Aaron Smith, you can see, is about to finish in 2nd, but he slows down on the start-finish straight, and guess what? He's waiting for Kevin Peters. They decided to keep positions until the final lap in case Knežević got a puncture or some similar technical issue. And that will certainly cause some discussions in the virtual paddock after the race. Not only the team order itself, but also the way it was executed. But nonetheless, Kevin Peters 2nd, Aaron Smith finishing in 3rd. Finally, Aaron Smith's first podium in the American Monoposto Championship. Well deserved. Let's look at what happened between Peckley and Kativo. Down the corkscrew, Peckley versus Kativo. Peckley going around the outside of Gonzalez Kativo. Another great maneuver from Gabriel Peckley, who's going to finish in 4th place. An absolutely impressive performance today from Gabriel Peckley. What more can I say? Absolutely entertaining to watch. And in the meantime, Jan Winter spins at the corkscrew on the final lap and loses multiple positions because of it. I suppose he won't be too sad considering that he essentially threw away a potential championship during his first stint, but nonetheless, let's have a look at the final results from Laguna Seca. So Knežević wins ahead of Kevin Peters and Smith in 3rd. Again, somewhat controversial finish for both MPM drivers, at least in the eyes of some. Peckley finishing in an incredible 4th, Kativo 5th, Early in 6th, Winter in 7th, Roostemeyer in 8th, Gaggiano in 9th, Curtis in 10th, Fekkeler in 11th, and Benton-Ritter retired in 12th. Full points for everyone. In the Drivers' Championship, there is now only 1 point between Knežević and Peters, with Knežević taking the lead in the championship. Jan Winter in 3rd again, he's pretty much out of the championship fight. It seems Kativo in 4th, only 2 points behind him, and James Early in 5th, best of the rest if you will. Odilo now has a chunky lead in this year's Teams Championship ahead of MPM and Costech Streamline in 4th, again best of the rest, similar to their team boss James Early, but I wonder what we'll see in 2 weeks when the American Monoposto Championship is headed for Daytona Beach, Florida, racing on one of the most famous ovals in the world. Until then, thank you for watching and keep racing.